Welcome in to this Sunday evening edition Blue Sky Live. From a streaming standpoint, this will be a Monday morning podcast version of Blue Sky Live. Brian Rippee joining me. We'll get to a number of topics today. The men's Ole Miss basketball season, regular season, comes to a fitting end on Saturday as South Carolina's Meechie Johnson hit a three essentially at the buzzer to beat Ole Miss 64-61 and avoid what would have been overtime again. That's been a very constant thing. The baseball team knocks off Evansville all three games this weekend. All three pretty handily there as they sweep the series. They sweep a 5-game homestand against the Aces. They won a couple games in the midweek, and now there's a step up in competition. That comes by way of Southern Miss in Hattiesburg on Tuesday night, and then Texas, the number one team in the country, Friday, Saturday, Sunday there from Austin. I will be in attendance for those three games in the Lone Star State. First time to Austin for me, and it is South by Southwest, so say a prayer for your boy as we get through next weekend. Also, the women's basketball team falls in the SEC semifinals. That also to the Texas Longhorns and Vic Schaefer. So now they wait on Selection Sunday. And what is really stupid, instead of doing it today and getting a day to yourself, they wait and do it after the men do it next week, which they just sit around for 7 days not having a selection show. It's really dumb there with women's basketball. So all that and more coming up today on a show brought to you every single weekday by Blue Sky. Blue Sky locations off the state of Mississippi, up and down I-55 throughout North Mississippi as well, taking care of you with plenty of different options for you, including Sweet Daddy stops along the way, brisket lunch specials, side items, desserts, and plenty more. And typically we're in the Clark Ford studio. Not today. Clark Ford in Amory, Mississippi, 662-257-1900. Corey wants to be your car guy, wants to be your truck guy. We'll take care of you. Give him a call. Move along with the car buying process. Again, 662-257-1900. All guests and crew, including Brian, on the Campbell Clinic hotline. Campbell Clinic is in Oxford and ready to take care of all your orthopedic needs. And then I am at home, and that is courtesy of Realtree, Realtree.com, helping me upgrade all of my technology. Let them help you out with your lifestyle, hunting, outdoor options there with Realtree. Again, Realtree.com, Bill, Tyler, the family, and everybody there with them. Again, Realtree.com. Brian, good to talk to you. You've had a pretty loaded podcast day. You talked some men's basketball a few minutes ago. You're doing this with me. You'll talk to Colin tomorrow, and you did go to the basketball game, at least for like a half yesterday. I mean, I'll give you like partial credit, given everything else. I mean, that's like a C-, C+. So proud of you, because I heard it was only like 3,000 people. Was that about right yesterday?
It wasn't a lot. There was no real students. It was pretty dead in there. I went with your neighbor, Robert Nance, and so they have a young kid, and they were wanting to leave at halftime, and so that was part of my decision. I was like, I'm not sitting here by myself and watching this, so I did. I went for a half, and it was it was fairly dead in there. I mean, it was also a very boring first half, so honestly, it was kind of hard to pay attention to the game. But yeah, was there. I timed it perfectly to where I just got soaking wet running back to my car in the middle of the rainstorm, but still, that was a more appealing option than watching another half of that. But yeah, just a fitting into the season for Ole Miss. Really a fitting last week. They're always in it, just can't ever make enough plays to actually win one.
And maybe a new high or new low, I guess you would call it, on how a game finishes, because South Carolina was, I guess, tied with LSU for worst record in the league coming into the day, one worse than Ole Miss, and the Rebels have the ball for final shot, instead turn it over, and then on the other end, nobody even really picks up Meechie Johnson, who's the best player for the Gamecocks. He's like 38 years old by now, played a lot of college basketball between South Carolina and Ohio State, and he dribbles down to a spot, pulls up, and hits it there with 0.7 seconds left to drop Ole Miss in the regular season 12-19, 4-14 in the SEC on a team that was 3-2 at one point. That's what's just so startling about this thing. Maybe not even startling, because there's been signs all the way back to the exhibition against St. Mary's, but I don't think anybody expected it to get this bad. They're in Nashville. They will play on Wednesday. Yeah, I'm not spending a ton of time on basketball. I'm just kind of setting up the weekend a little bit here with this. But the point is another, not just late game situation where it's a loss, but a late game situation where there's a mistake, there's a lack of a play. We've talked about it a ton. I'm not gonna beat the plenty dead horse. We will get to coverage of that with BlueSky and Rebels 24/7. Neil will be in Nashville, and then we'll do the postmortem and try to figure out how Ole Miss replaces a good bit of its roster and takes another shot next season after having the Sweet 16 and falling all the way to the 15 seed in the SEC tournament there again starting on Wednesday. By the way, South Carolina falls. Texas has won the women's SEC basketball tournament. The Longhorns are your conference champions. I'm seeing a Twitter post right now as we're talking. They did not get back into the host category for sure. I don't think they're probably going to be in a 5 or a 6 seed, but played really well there in the tournament, getting a couple wins, probably getting a little confidence, feeling good about where they are compared to how that regular season ended for Coach Yo and her team. They lose those 2 games against Florida and Texas A&M, which are going to be the reason if they do not or when they do not host a game in the NCAA tournament. But overall, another 20-win season. They will wear white jerseys on the opening day of the NCAA tournament, and they were within 2 of Texas with about, 5-7 minutes to go, something like that, and the Longhorns went on a big run, pulled away, advanced, and then beat the Gamecocks today. So either one of those sports. Any thoughts before I move on?
On the men's side, here's a zag. Ole Miss losing that game means they play at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, which is the first game of the evening session, which means it'll start on time. Whereas South Carolina, they win that game. Now they play at 8:30 Central Time, which would be 9:30 there in Columbia. And those games, the second part of each session, never really start on time. So if you are one that feels like they need to stay up and watch Ole Miss basketball, season probably end. At least you don't have to stay up till 9 o'clock or well past 9:30 to do it. No, just pretty typical. I mean, just a couple errors down the stretch. You have the turnover. Beard was convinced that Giffa got fouled, but then not picking up Michi Johnson at half court when apparently they spent the timeout being wanting to pick him up at half court after showing zone, which I didn't totally understand, but just not doing it is pretty typical of this team. And really just a big picture thought is the missed opportunity after a Sweet 16 run. It's really how this year went down too, not only not being an NCAA tournament team or not really being in the conversation past, mid to late January, but it's the fact that you didn't win on your home floor since January 10th. They won one SEC home game in the Pavilion this year. And that's one of the first. Yeah, I know. I mean, you think about it. The other 3 wins are on the road. The only one home win is against Missouri on January 10th. It's the 3rd SEC game period, the 2nd SEC home game. Your students aren't back yet. So it's early enough in the year. So, I mean, they went a long time without – it was a tough year from a fan standpoint. I guess you didn't really give the fans and season ticket holders and people that come to the games a whole lot to watch. And I think that's a big missed opportunity in all of this too. I think some of it's correcting a little bit of muscle memory of Ole Miss fans thinking, okay, it's February, it's baseball season. Well, hell, this was kind of over mid to late January, and just not seeing them win on their home floor past the 10th of January is pretty jarring.
I guess I knew that stat when I really thought about it, but I had not put it into that type of context as you were saying it. And that's the thing. I mean, I've kind of got one thought too, and then we'll move on, which is it's not just a losing season. It's not that you're coming off the Sweet 16. Like I saw a post on Rebels 24/7 today, and it's one of our better posters. Was talking about, seemed like there was more angst or frustration regarding this than the football team that really struggled. Didn't really struggle. That missed the playoffs in 2024, losing to Kentucky and then Florida in games they should have won. And number one, I don't know, that was pretty heated. I don't know if we've had many worse message board days than Florida in November of 2024 on that afternoon. I was getting ready to run the Philadelphia Marathon the next day, and I was pretty happy to log off and hand that bad boy over to Neil that night, as it was a pretty tough 24 hours there following that. But this is the level of fall off. It's the level of really non-competitiveness, because we can talk. There's 2 different types of competitiveness. You can say, and I agree, they're in almost every game. They're not blown out by 30 the way you've seen some of these teams that fall in the back half and the bottom of the league have over the years. But at the end of the day, you're in the SEC, and the point is to win. You're paying Chris Beard $6-7 million a year. You had a roster that was $9 to $11 million in NIL. Definitely at least 9, more like 10 to 11 in NIL. It is the standard of not being met when there are resources, when you're coming off last season. And again, it can happen. We're in a portal era that everything's year to year. It just is what it is. You're changing over so much of the roster. There's only 2 players back from last year. So in some ways, yeah, sure, you got the same coaching staff and you got the same head coach, but you don't have the same team. Sweet 16 doesn't mean much of anything outside of Malik Dia and Eduardo Klafke. That's it. And now you're having to turn around, do it again, and you're having to get the chemistry right, make sure you get the right guys in the portal. You're having to evaluate right. And look, I think Chris Beard's going to turn it around. I believe in him as a football coach. As a basketball coach, I think he's great. I think he's organized. I know this season's been raw hell on him in every way. It's not like he doesn't care. And he's done a lot of stuff to tell the fan base, no, I'm here. He's gone out of his way to say we're going to fix it. I mean, he's taken that level of responsibility. He did it on Thursday against Reb Talk. But it's a big year for him because we're in a new era. The NIL era is not what he built at Texas Tech. It's not even really what he first did at Texas when, his first team at Texas was a bunch of transfers and guys that had come from kind of all over, and it was starting to work. He had done a phenomenal job there. So right now, it's an anomaly. It's an aberration. It's something that was unexpected, and now he gets the chance to go out and fix it. It's going to be well-funded. They're not going to cut basketball funding. If anything, he might get a little more money. I don't know. Beats me. Rev share goes up just because Rev share goes up every year. That's going to be the case. It's like 21 and change total for each university right now. But it's a big season perception-wise for Chris Beard. This offseason is, from a pressure, maybe is the right word. I don't know if he has had a bigger pressure off-season in his career because he's frankly he's always won. He had one rebuild year at Texas Tech in year 1, and then they got to rolling and moving and whatnot. So he's feeling probably a different type of responsibility, a different type of pressure, and something that's never happened because I think he has to – it shows where we are. I think he has to sort of legitimize himself as a coach who can do it, a coach – and I mean this in very relative context to sports, worthy of the money Ole Miss is putting in a lot of ways. I mean, look, I get it. Ole Miss has no history. I get that you still potentially have to overpay for some players. It's not an easy, cush job. Players aren't just going, oh, my God, I can't wait to go to Ole Miss and play basketball. I fully am on board and understand that. But at the same time, payroll's the payroll, and you got to put it together. And there's teams in the top 25, top 30 that have a lot smaller payrolls than Ole Miss, and frankly, history related to Ole Miss. Nebraska's winning like crazy in basketball right now this year. So it is. That's my main interest as these next 6 weeks or so play out, and we get the tournament, and then we get the portal period, and we kind of go. Is that it's a critical time, and it's on Chris Beard and his staff to show that they can evaluate and they can replace and they can put a roster together that is competitive inside the SEC. I think going in, they liked this team. They said they did, and I don't just mean publicly what you tell the media in press conferences. I don't mean that. I mean a lot of like backroom stuff of people being honest. They thought they had it, and they didn't. By any stretch of the imagination, you did not have it, and they've got to figure out a way to fix it and sort of prove that worth as we move forward to this portal period that starts in, I guess, doing the quick math, about 3.5, 4 weeks.
It's an anomaly for now, like you said, which I think is a perfect way to put it. And I think just
5
based
weeks.
on Beard's track record, I do think they will right the ship and correct this. I think it's a one-off. It's really something that's never happened in his entire career. And I don't think you'll have to – he's saying all the right things publicly, like you mentioned. He mentioned it again in his press conference yesterday afternoon, just talking about how he's going to spend the next 12 months – I'm sure he meant like 9 or whatever the offseason is – to fix it. And, I mean, I don't think there'll be any shortage of motivation just from everything you talked about with the sheer pressure. But also, I don't know. I watched him a lot this year. It didn't look like he had a ton of fun coaching this team. I mean, no one paid attention to the press conferences afterward. But like some of the quotes were pretty like incredible to me. The Malik Dia quote where they asked, like, when Dia fell down and kind of sort of got hurt at the A&M game, and A&M makes a 5-on-4 3, and Beard got asked what happened. He basically was like, all I saw was Dia laying on the ground and A&M getting a 5-on-4. Like, he didn't have a ton of fun watching this team or this year. And so I don't think there will be any shortage of motivation to make sure this never happens again, and him not to go, to avoid going through this again. So I think they'll get it right. The track record's there. The guy's won everywhere he's gone. To your point, though, it is this different set of circumstances. But, until proven otherwise, I'm going to go with the track record, and I think they'll be a lot better and a lot more competitive next year.
People were expecting, at worst, a season kind of like Mike White just had. Georgia, really good year, ended up being the 7 seed. And I don't mean necessarily a top 8 seed in the SEC tournament, yes or no, but like that, where you're kind of in. I mean, that's kind of what everybody thought. Like I said, it's the level of fall off. It's not just simply, everybody's pissed off because a bad season happened. No, they do. They need grittier guys. They need dogs. They need a roster that makes sense and fits. Corin Johnson was a bust, and that changed so much about the way the roster construction was for this team, because suddenly you're playing Ilias at the point more than you meant to, and things just did not mold. Perry, didn't necessarily have exactly what you thought when you were coming in from Kentucky there. Dia, he played really well at times, scored a lot of points at times, but didn't consistently take that step that Beard's been stressing for him for so long. He's been all over Malik for a long time. Yeah, the roster has got to be cohesive, and it's got to make sense, and that just simply was not the case. So let's talk a little more about brighter topics right now, and that's a baseball team that's 15-2 in the SEC, winners of 5 in a row this week in Oxford. Again, Evansville, I like their Friday guy, but outside of that, not a lot of competition there. This is not the group of aces that advanced to the Super Regional against the Tennessee a couple years ago in Knoxville and became within one run of eliminating Tennessee before they made it to Omaha and eventually won the national championship. It's not that group. But I'll tell you, Brian, today it was an 8-3 win. It was 8-2 going into the last inning. That took forever, and Evansville did score a run there in the ninth. But I thought, given the level of competition, I talked a little bit about this on my show I did solo on Saturday morning, which was, given the level of competition, I thought you got a lot of the things you really wanted to see, or maybe you were looking for in a final non-con weekend before this thing gets really serious next week at Texas. Again, Texas, we'll talk about them all week, or we'll talk about them in every different form there before league play. Again, I'm out of town for a few days, but we're piecing podcasts together, and we'll be with you, and you'll get coverage in PW Digital and Rebels 24/7. Texas 15-0. They're one of only 2 undefeated teams left in Division I baseball. It's Texas and USC, of all people. I don't know how good USC is or isn't, but USC is the other undefeated team. Tyler Rebb in the stream, by the way, he says today's uniform for Evansville was great. It was really good. They had on the purple tops today. They maybe Evansville has one of the top 5 or 10 times where it's one of the ugliest uniforms you could ever wear, with their pewter, with the purple numbers and the weird outlines and everything. They wore like that old school, or not old school, the new school sort of Tampa pewter dark gray things with the purple on Friday, and then today really clean. Today should just be the uniforms if those are your other options. They were they went from like -2 to like 8.5 there over the course of 2 days on wearing uniforms. But anyway, sorry, got sidetracked. You saw a lot of things that you really would like to see. The offense. Look, this is an offense that's never going to be perfect. We're going to be talking about these type of topics all season for this team. They're going to hit a lot of home runs. They're going to strike out a lot. Their running and scoring position is going to drive you insane at times, because when it's not there and they're not hitting the ball out of the park, they're going to look really bad offensively. They just are. I've been warning you since the fall, and I'm still warning you right now as they go to face a really, really good pitching staff in Austin against the Longhorns starting on Friday, and then they've got their hands full on Tuesday with Southern Miss there in Hattiesburg. But point is, you got a good outing from Hunter Elliott. You got sort of kind of what you want to see in some ways. I know he gave up some runners again, and that's just who Hunter is right now. It is what it is. That's where you are with him. but he got through the first okay. His hit the runners he stranded were in like the third and fourth and fifth, something like that. Townsend is special right now. Again, he will face much better offenses because your thing for Townsend, we're talking about 25 strikeouts, 2 walks, something like that. If I have that right, maybe off, but something like that. Just now up to pitch count time, or really not even at full pitch count situations because he had that groin pull in the preseason that limited his ability to really ramp his pitch count up the way that you would think. But he had a 0.66 ERA coming into the weekend and lowered it. It's at 0.48 now for Townsend. What you want to see, because he hasn't had a lot of base runners, is last year he was really good with nobody on, and then when he got a lot of traffic, just mentally sort of got scattered. You want to know consistently, has he completely found more maturity and confidence in those ways? I want to see that from Cade in SEC play. I think that's going to be the difference, whether he's simply an above average to good SEC Saturday starter or an elite top of the line, maybe the best starter in the league on Saturday, is going to be his mental ability once runners and adversity hits and it gets a little loud and it gets a little chaotic and all those things going on. We just haven't seen that because he's been so dominant that he hasn't had to face the one question mark that I have left for him. So we'll see if that comes in Austin on Saturday. But that's where I sort of am with him. But he's throwing 6 pitches right now. He's locating 6 different pitches. Fastball's been good. It's been really elite from a metric standpoint. He's got a ton of confidence. Hunter and Joel Mangrum have been excellent mentors for him. Again, I'm going to write about that later in the week. I've talked to both guys in the last few days about it. You got a lot out of Townsend this weekend. And then Will Libbert, I thought today it wasn't clean. It was 50-something strikes out of 83 pitches. It was a little scattered. He walked 2. He hit 2. Gave up a couple runs. But he did what he didn't do last week, which was he didn't tire out all of a sudden. He didn't just hit the proverbial wall and fall apart, because that's what happened in Houston at Icon Park last week against Coastal Carolina. And then he made pitches to get out of it. And I thought, in some ways, giving him some confidence to have traffic, have runners, and then get them off the bases and get in the dugout, that was more beneficial than simply just shutting down Evansville for 5 innings, 6 innings, and going on about your day where you don't face that. I thought mentally that might bode really well for him as things progress into next week. I thought that was nice from Libbert. One thing for Tyler here, he's asking in the stream, Chase, have you heard any MLB scout buzz on Townsend? Think he's our best player. The fact that he can throw the cutter, slider, sweeper, and curve should boost his stock. Yeah, I mentioned this a couple times, and I know I wrote it on the board. I won't give a team because I don't want to give the person away, because some of you guys probably will be able to figure it out. Not Ole Miss related scout, so it's not like Steven or somebody. A national cross-checker said 2 weeks ago that from a profile standpoint, thought it was the top Ole Miss arm in the last 14 years. Thought that Bobby Wall, at least back to Bobby Wall, from a what they throw, what the metrics say, the entire package of a major league ceiling. So again, I'm not saying he's going to have a better college career than Doug Nikhazy. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying he's going to baffle guys the way DeLucia did for 10 weeks. I guess 6 weeks. Mike didn't throw him against some teams. But in general, the overall profile and what scouts are looking for, they thought that it was at least the best Ole Miss has offered up since Bobby Wall.
That's some pretty high praise. I mean, he's shown flashes of looking like potentially one of the best pitchers in the Southeastern Conference this year. I think what you hit on will certainly be the difference maker for him, but he's looked nasty, and it's the amount of pitches he's throwing for strikes too. And he's throwing 5, 6 pitches at times in games. I mean,
yes.
And it's pretty nasty stuff when it looks good. It's certainly going to be a step up in offense starting this week, but he's looked the part as one of those guys you could look back at the end of the year, and he's up there in the probably top in voting for the SEC Pitcher of the Year category, or certainly a guy that bursts onto the scene that maybe didn't get a lot of pub nationally coming into the season. But I don't think there's a whole lot of question as to whether this pitching staff will hold up and give the team a chance to win games and be competitive in the Southeastern Conference. I think it's the other two phases of the game. It's, the offense when they're out hitting the ball over the fence, and the defense. But they defended better this weekend. I think just the one error. But, there are a couple moments in the midweek where I'd written down a note or two. There was a tailor-made double play turn that didn't get turned against North Alabama. That was like, wow, these guys are really struggling, particularly on the infield defensively. I think that's defense and hitting, particularly when the ball is not going over the fence, is what's going to be the concern for me. I think the pitching staff, they're in a really good spot. If you stay healthy through this season, I mean, look, we got a long way to go. The SEC 10 weekends, a lot can happen, but they've got a chance. Like, would it stun you? They had all three of their weekend guys, I think, made all 10 SEC starts last year. Would it shock you if you looked up at all at the end of this year and it was the same thing, unless there was an injury? I mean, they seem fairly set there, which is a pretty good advantage.
It wouldn't shock me at all. What you wonder a little bit, and I guess let me put it this way, why it doesn't shock me is that we haven't really seen signs, maybe since the first injury in 23, that Hunter is going to extend much past that 5-inning mark. I just think that's where he is right now. But I said this on Saturday, and this show has a much larger reach, so I'll take the time to repeat myself. I think this is an important topic as we get into league play, and we're talking about this every day. I talked to Carl about this in the preseason on a podcast. The world's changed. Starting pitching length has changed. If you get 5, the guy did his job. If he did 6, that's the old 7 1/3 at this point. You can add 1.5 innings almost to what these guys are getting if they go at least 5, because there's just specialization. There is max effort from so many different pitchers and the way they throw. It's just, there's a lot of reasons. I'm not getting into that necessarily, but I think I think sometimes we are too critical of a pitcher who's just going 5 innings. And you can be an ace and just go 5 innings in this world. But the point of that is, where Hunter frustrates people is that he just goes 5 innings because his fastball command was off early in the game, and that elevated the pitch count, and that kept him from 6 innings. Because Hunter, his slider has been really good. His breaking ball has been good. His changeup has been phenomenal. You look at the advanced metrics on his changeup. He's getting huge whiff rates. It's kind of that. It's the evolution of what you thought was going to be a major league changeup his freshman season. That was his main out pitch that he was so good with throwing the wiffle ball, if you will. There, what's the pitcher for Southern Miss that year? Tanner Hall. Is that right?
Yeah.
A changeup very similar to Tanner Hall for Hunter that's been incredible. It's just fastball command. It is 100% just straight up fastball command. If he has it, okay, you got a chance at 6. You got a chance at 7 innings or whatnot, but he's just running some innings up with pitch count because he just loses release point on the fastball. He's working on it. He'll admit it. It frustrates him more than anything else, but it's just an interesting concept where a guy that's left-handed, that doesn't throw crazy velocity, gets tons of outs, and has a lot of pitches, and yet his fastball command is not great. It's just it sort of baffles your mind when you're looking at it and trying to put it into terms, because it's an anomaly in a lot of ways from what you typically see. But he's, as I've said, he's the best I've ever covered with runners on base and getting out of jams and keeping, if anything, upping his competitiveness with runners on base. I think that's why maybe he's been so good for Cade, and you hope that he's been great for Cade, is some of the processes that he goes through to be so good at that. So no, I'm sorry. I that was a really long-winded answer to not even get to the point as I'm making it. If Hunter is going to go 4.25 innings throughout these 10 weeks, Hudson Calhoun is incredibly critical. And you're going to use him to try to get you through the 7th, get you through the 8th, and see if he can run 60, 70, 75 pitches where you're just sort of playing 2 starters, much like Mason Morris a year ago from a bridge standpoint. The problem last year, and where, again, I want to be careful because Mason had some elite freaking stuff, okay? I am not comparing pure stuff between Mason Morris and Hudson Calhoun. But What I am doing is saying that, if anything, I think Hudson's profile might let him go a little deeper into games than Mason was able to do. Because Mason, Mike said this, the frustration for Ole Miss with Mason was that you brought him in the fifth or whatever to sort of give you some length, and he ran out of gas 2 innings in, barely over 2+ innings in, something like that. Well, suddenly you're only through the 6th through the 7th. You still got to get 6 outs on a Friday night, and it gets kind of complicated. If Hudson can find the way to average at least 3, maybe 4 at times, okay, now we're cooking. Now we're in a different stratosphere, and you're gonna have a better record on Friday night if you're Ole Miss, because look, I know they won 43 games. They ended up going 16-14 in the SEC. They had a nice season. They had a great bounce back from where they were in 23 and 24. But I think it was through the Oklahoma game we were writing about, hey, they've got a little bit of a Friday night problem because they can't use Elliott and Morris and get to the end. They're having a hard time on Friday figuring out how to get 27 outs. And I think I like Calhoun and what he is able to do there. So if he does that, you've got Taylor Rabe, who, by the way, didn't even throw this weekend. They didn't need him to sort of spell Townsend or Libert in some way. So my answer to your question, yes, I completely agree with you. There's a world where all 30 are the same. If you told me there's a change, I think it's Rabe starting on Sunday and then Libert being a bullpen arm, because Libert is really good with 2 pitches. And the 3rd and 4th pitch kind of come and go a little bit. When they're on, he's elite, because, we're talking about some really good swing and miss off a fastball, the slider. Last year in league play, Libert's slider, even when they played at Missouri and that mess of a situation, was a 43% whiff rate last year on that slider. It can really play, but if he can't land the other stuff, well, suddenly you have less value as a starter, and you go, hey, if we run him out here in the 5th and then the 6th and go, hey, just go get 6 outs, maybe you've got a really dominant relief arm there from the left side. So I think as you're maneuvering it, I think you kind of have a big pile with the 3 starters, then with Calhoun, and then with Rabe to sort of see where you are as we move forward.
What have you made Mangrum now? Like, this past year was his first full off season, because the year before he's like taking the job, and I imagine, I don't remember the exact timing of how that lined up, but probably got a little bit of a late start to everything. But I think he's done an unbelievable job of guys looking different than your typical Mike Bianco profile pitcher, and just the amount of guys that they roll out of the bullpen that not only throw with higher velocity, but just have multiple pitches that they throw for strikes that don't all look like a hard slider, has been pretty remarkable. What have you just seen, like just 18-month sample size or 2 years, however long it's been with Joel Mangrum? What do you make of it? I think it's been pretty remarkable.
It has been A+ in every way. I have really no negative. I have no criticism of anything that. Okay, in 2 things.
I don't think there's anything to criticize at this point.
No, the one criticism, and this is kind of a joke, and I'm kind of serious, is that Mike waited 1 year too long to do it. That the time to make a pitching coach change should have been after 23, when they allowed the 3rd assistant. And it's nothing against Chris Cleary. I love Chris. But like, when you're saying, how do I make the team better? How do I use my assistant coach spots to the best of my ability? From an efficiency standpoint, it's a very clear thing that you hire a pitching coach, you have a recruiting coordinator, you have a hitting coach, and then you have a head coach, and he acts like a CEO. It's what Mike did after 24. So any criticism would just simply be they waited a year too long, and did that cause 24 in some ways because you did not do that. Now, look, if you only could get Joel Mangrum, maybe it was worth it, because, again, kind of piggybacking off a little bit of what I said Saturday, and I'll elaborate because, again, different show. What Joel's done for his own development and growth has been really impressive, and then what he's done for the team. And what I mean by that is that he had some college experience, and I get it, and that was very valuable. I'll give Mike a ton of credit. Bianco wanted somebody that had pro experience and college experience, because you had to meld together the mindset of, you need to win right now. We're in a winning business. This is not about finding guys that are going to be good in 24 months. You have to make them competitive right now in short off seasons. You got to make them competitive and develop and get better throughout the season. and we have to win. But we also have to get them better for year 2, for year 3, for their own growth, for their own draft stock, which only helps the team and is a big self-fulfilling prophecy back and forth. You can tell I have a kid because I'm like using a squishy in my hand while I'm talking. It's that, and Joel has been so good at both those things. You ask every pitcher on this team, and I may mean that literally. We talked to Walker Hooks about it today, who was phenomenal on Sunday, by the way. He struck out 6 in 2.2 innings. He's been great. Only allowed 1 run in his last 8.2 innings dating back to the season opener when he got knocked around a little bit because his fastball command was off. Joel has shown such a level of care in the pitching staff as people. And I mean people. I mean, Kate Townsend calls him a second father. It is...
Remember Maddox last year?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Riley Maddox, same thing, and that's in year 1. That's with barely any offseason and anything else. He cares about these people, and he gets the players to trust him in a way that really makes for a special coach. You just don't see that throughout the country, especially for an assistant. That's not a normal thing, and he's been able to do that despite different personality types, because every pitcher is different. It's not like you have one personality type you're trying to coexist with. He has found connection points with everybody, and what happens is you care about them as people. They start responding to you. They trust you because of what your background is at the pro level. Again, he came from the Cleveland Guardians, and there are not many, if any, pitching development franchises better than the Cleveland Guardians. They're awesome at it. And he has helped them in so many different ways, increasing technology. Ole Miss is a more technical, technology-driven pitching staff than they were 2 years ago. Their tunneling has become pretty elite relative to the rest of the SEC, and they were bad at it, frankly, at times prior to Mangrum. And what I mean by that is their arm slots coexist in the same place. The ball comes out, and it's harder to read by hitters. It's I get it's a baseball term, but what it essentially means is hitters have much less time to pick up what the pitch is because it's not something they can read out of the hand in the same way. It's very valuable. It's very important. And Mangrum has taught a lot of new pitches. You got a lot of sweepers. You got a lot of cutters. They look for variance on pitching staffs. You know, how many years for Ole Miss was it a situation where it seemed like everybody on the staff was just fastball slider? And it was just fastball slider over and over and over again, and that's what everybody threw, and there was just so little variance. Now you've got some real curveballs. You've got some sweepers. You've got a lot of cutters. You've got guys using 2 seams at times when that is what profiles best for them. They put them on the pitch lab and they say, hey, with what your mechanics are and what your tunneling abilities are, no, this is the pitch to do. This is how we play off of that. And it's a major league type program. I mean, that's that bottom line. He was the pitching coordinator for the Cleveland Guardians, and he is running that same type of technical player first development, injury prevention. That's one of the things. Like, I couldn't get Owen Kelly after one of the midweek games because I think it run ruled or something. And Mike kind of made a joke because I walked over there and I was like, what? I mean, I was playing with Mike. We were kind of joking around, but I was like, something Rippee did all the time, by the way. I mean, they could just joke and play and laugh and whatnot. But I was kind of playing with Mike, and I was like, are you just anti-media now? I can't have the starting pitcher. And he kind of laughed, and he said, well, he goes, he's out doing arm care. He goes, that's a Joel thing. No, I don't know, whatever, whatever. So point is, it's every part of the process. And then the second thing of a really long answer, I guess the reason it's a podcast, is you got to give Mike credit. He got out of the way. A guy who's handled pitching for 26 years, 25 years, whatever it was, and has stood behind every bullpen, made every pitch call. I mean, the only times that the catcher has called a pitch in 26 years is when Mike was thrown out of the game. And I think it's like Brett Basham and a couple other guys at times. And Mike, let it go. He's the CEO. He gets out of the way. Mangrum calls the pitches. Mangrum does everything to do with the pitching staff and taking care of them on a day-to-day level. And look, a guy like Mike who had a title, had been a head coach at that point for 28 seasons between 2 schools, that's not nothing. That's something that deserves credit for you to make that level of change and to completely get out of the way as the bullets start flying. There's one thing to say it in a press conference. It's another thing to do it when you have a little snag or you have a losing streak and still you're just sticking with it and letting him cook and letting him do his job.
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't last as long as Mike has if you don't buy into it. I think sometimes the criticism of Mike is being slow to adapt, but when he does it full force. Like he gets out of the way and lets people do their jobs because I guess in some ways it's counterintuitive if you don't. I mean, clearly what he was doing wasn't working, and so if he was going to hire a pitching coach and then not really let the guy do his job and micromanage him, he was probably going to end up in the same situation. And so him having the awareness and the smarts to realize that is one, not surprising, but two, he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that because like you said, he did it for a long time. And you talk about standing over every bullpen session, I can still like see the pose in my head. I mean, it's in between the two mounds with his arms crossed on every single bullpen session. And even just talking like that, you mentioned the starting pitcher thing where he's just like, that's a Joel thing, just letting him do what he does. I think the proof is in the results. And I think it's probably not an accident in year two that like you're talking about like how this team's going to fare in SEC play, and pitching is not really a concern at all. We've talked about different like tweaks or roles, but it's not once has anyone, and rightly so, mentioned that pitching could be an issue for this team in conference play. It's everywhere else. And I think that's a testament to both of them.
This team is going to go 100% as far as Hunter Elliott and Cade Townsend carry them and what this pitching staff does. And then and we'll move over to offense in a second. I'm going to take a break and then we'll do that. And also, we probably have not talked about, as much as I've talked about Elliott and Townsend and some of these guys, the thing I haven't talked about enough is you're also going to need Landon Koenig and Landon Waters to give you a lot of innings there at the bat. Because, again, Rabe and Calhoun are not going to go through the ninth every time. You're going to have some close games. You're going to be down one. You're going to be up one. You're going to be in a mess. And the games that are going to decide this season are those games. You're going to need Koenig and Waters to be really good for 3 outs. You were asking for 3 outs per time. And if they can give that, that's another bullet, and that's another way that this team maybe has one of the best pitching staffs in the SEC. We'll move to the offense in a second. If we do that, let me tell you about the Firm. Does your home and auto insurance keep going up? They're a proud Liberty Mutual and Safeco Insurance Agency partner, founded by Ole Miss alum Brian Hayden. They service the entire Southeastern Conference. Let their team of licensed professionals review your insurance needs and put together coverages that take care of you and your family. 662-236-1101. Staff at thefirmsouth.com. The Jackson Graber Group with GMFS Mortgage. John Graber in Oxford, local trusted mortgage lender right there in town. Help all home buyers with first home, new construction, refinances. Graduated from Oxford High, Ole Miss alum, local in-house processing, underwriting, servicing. People you know taking care of you. So whether you're buying a home, refinancing, or just have questions, gmfsmortgage.com/JGG, 662-762-4502. Podcast brought to you by Horn Legend, hornlegend.com. Please use MPW Digital in the drop down. They've got specials going on right now to get you a free vest, get you a free Oceanside jacket with Horn Legend. And look, at the temperatures go up. You got polos, you got tons of different options, including those sports shirts. If you got to dress up a little bit, you got to go to church. Their performance type fabric there with sports shirts from Horn Legend. So again, that's hornlegend.com. And podcast brought to you by Chicory Market. ChicoryMarket.com is the address. Sorry, the website. The address is on North Lamar in Oxford, Midtown Shopping Center. Produce, vegetables, fruit, specialty items not available anywhere else, and improving prices as well. They've got a customer rewards program there at Chicory. You can stock up for your Airbnb, your condos when you come into town for weekends, or just simply if you live here, you should check them out. That is chicorymarket.com. Running through the stream a little bit.
Can I give you an AK quote that just popped up real quick?
I'd love an AK quote that's popped up.
So I don't know. For some reason, this must be my algorithm. I've seen it a lot lately. Addison Herbert, my basketball guy, we talk about a decent bit. He's having one of those years with one of those teams that I think just really annoys him. On his point guard, Chance Westry, quote, he's asleep off the ball, doesn't rebound to his size, is a bad shooter, and looks like he's about to have a stroke every time he runs up and down the floor. But he's the most gifted that I've ever coached. So he's had a couple of weeks. I don't know if you've noticed. He talked about them being paid a lot of money, and if it's too much to ask to make a layup, because
he called it Bozo World or Bozo Land or something during that. Yeah.
He had one a couple of weeks ago where he said he learned that this team's like one of the worst offensive teams in the history of UAB basketball or something, and he's like, wow, that's 50 years. He goes, guys, that's a long time. So he's He's kind of on one lately with whatever this team he's got is, but I always enjoy a good AK quote.
I
So
think they
looks
ended
like
up bagging the 4 seed in the American tournament, if I have that right. I think that's
he
what they.
won today. I looked at the quote and then checked to see if this was anger or quippy, witty AK, and I think it's a little bit on the witty side because he did describe his starting point guard as looking like he has a stroke every time he runs down the floor. But they did win the game today, so he's on one.
Austin, good to see you in the stream. He says, late. Sorry, I'm late. I'm not sure if it's been said yet. But congrats to Neil and the family on the good news. Yes, absolutely. Correct with that. They've had a great weekend. The McCrady's. And then he says, since when do we do Sunday shows? Loving it. But we had McCrady Siskey last Sunday. Now BlueSky Live on this Sunday. What are we doing? Well, we're traveling is kind of what we're doing. We've got Siskey stationed in Arlington as he's the offensive coordinator for the Birmingham Stallions. So they're practicing. They're in their preseason. Got 4 Rebels on that team, by the way. So they're getting ready for their season starting in a few weeks. And then Neil's been out of town. And then I'm headed out of town tomorrow, and I'm going to be gone through Sunday. So I'm leaving, and then I'm going to fly from elsewhere to Austin for the weekend. I'll fly back into Memphis on Sunday after the game. So that's where we are on that. That's the reason for that. We're just simply trying to make it work as time goes on. That's the deal. Making sure you get your coverage. Make sure you get your podcast. We're going to take care of you here with MPW Digital and Rebels 24/7. See Cisco in the stream. Good to talk to you, Tyler. Guess you're headed out to get you a few bites to eat in Arlington, Texas, where you guys are stationed for the preseason prior to the season starting there with Birmingham. We keep trying to do. Still want to do a meet and greet and do kind of a thing with all you guys, but we're going to have to be pretty good on making that work because, frankly, they're not in town very much. They fly in for the game, fly back to Arlington after the game. So we could probably make it work, but it's going to have to be logistically pretty precise. Let's say. So when I made my first comment at the start about I thought Ole Miss got a lot of what they wanted to see, I really had offense in my mind because we came into the week with all the bad stats. I don't remember where it ended up, but I think Ole Miss was 8 of 48 or 10 of 48 or 10 of 49 with runners in scoring position over a certain period. And that included 8 in one game. So do the math. If you take out Southeast Missouri, that stretch from the Sunday against Missouri State through the midweek against UNA maybe or against Memphis. No, it was against Memphis. So from Missouri State through Memphis, they were 2 for 47 with runners in scoring position is where they were during that stretch. Wrote about it on Thursday, talked to Mike about it, talked to Judd about it. And they got different things this weekend that, look, it's who the offense is. Just go ahead, get ready for it, people. Again, I am warning you with every fiber of my being to be prepared for some boom and bust and some great days and some days where you want to pull your hair out. It just is the way this team is constructed. And if they get really hot in June when that time comes, they might go win the whole damn thing. I don't know. But if they don't, it's going to look really bad for a day or two. So what they did on Friday was they got hits. Again, Evansville's Friday dude was pretty good. He was good against Tennessee 2 years ago as a freshman. He's now a junior. They put a quality arm out there. And Ole Miss got hits runners in scoring position. They got hits runners on base. They moved some runners. They hit the ball out of the ballpark some this weekend. They scored, that first game on Friday, they only had 7 runs, but they had 15 hits. And I thought just simply having 15 hits was a big deal. It's like, hey, I get it wasn't efficient, but forget efficient right now. Hit some singles, hit some doubles, get some movement going in so many ways. I know the fan base hates when I say move the baseball instead of put it in play, but just do something to sort of get some action on the bases. And then the second game, they just mauled Evansville. Again, bad pitching in that game, but you're talking about 14-2. It's about 14-0 until the 9th inning. And then today was a sneaky good offensive game because you just see 8-3, and it's nothing overly flashy. And 3 of the 8 runs came from Tristan Becerra. He hit his, I think, 7th home run of the season. He now has 24 RBIs. The 24 RBIs lead the team. The 7 home runs, if I'm right on 7, are second only to Judd on the team. Got a home run from Braden Randall today. So they hit a couple balls out of the ballpark. But they didn't strike out a ton, and they really put the ball in play. They had sacrifices. Here's a stat for you, Brian. You may have seen this from Twitter. Ole Miss was dead last in the SEC in sacrifices coming into the weekend. They had more sacrifices in the 3 games against Evansville than they had the rest of the season combined coming into Friday.
That's moving it better, I guess. I mean, put a better execution and situational baseball. They also walked 9 times, particularly against a starting pitcher that was struggling to throw strikes, and that was kind of the MO on him. And so, to
But
add
they
to your
don't
point
chase
about
a
it being,
ton. To their credit, they do walk when you try to walk them.
they do. They've done better with that. I thought they moved the ball better this weekend too. I didn't know that was a debate as to whether move it or put it in play. I've always thought it was the same thing, but they did move it better this weekend. I agree. The 15 hits was an encouraging sign, but I mean, you guys like Judd Utermark. The broadcast spent most of the weekend, and rightfully so, talking about him mashing it over the fence. But then he hit 2 or 3 doubles that were just lasers too, and so they put good swings on it, even keeping it in the ballpark. And I thought they were better this weekend, and then they didn't have like a catastrophe error. I think there was just one the whole weekend, so that's encouraging as well. But yeah, I mean, just the way this off lineup is constructed, there's going to be a similar amount of boom and bust that you saw a year ago, and then you get Pasella has the 2 home runs in Game 2 on Friday, which I imagine has to be an encouraging sign because that was a big portal addition for them. I'm curious kind of how they handled that. They're playing Tate Sermon's a little bit, Topher Jones. I'm curious to see kind of how they handled that corner outfield spot and how many opportunities they give to Pasella versus the other guys. But seeing him hit the ball over the fence twice has to be a good sign.
I have no idea who they trust out of that group.
I don't either.
Friday.
I don't think they do.
When I see a lineup on Friday, I'll just kind of go, okay, because I can make anything make sense. It's a huge day for Pasella. Confidence-wise, he was just – I mentioned this yesterday. It was one of those days at the park on Friday where being there made so much of a difference because you saw just sighs of relief off people's faces. You saw their body language, pro and con, as it got, and as guys had better days on Friday than they had in a while. There was just relief. There was so much relief and a little bit of confidence being built up. And, because I think Pasella was sort of sheepish. Because people were talking about it, about fans chanting his name. It was a bunch of kids, and they were doing it before the game. And I think, if anything, he felt a little weird about it because he was hitting 143 coming in. It was kind of like, why? Like, are they making fun of me? Like, what? And they weren't. They just like him, and he's a great guy. He's a phenomenal clubhouse guy. Luke Chang called that. One of the things they did when Pasella signed was they just asked Luke because they played together at Illinois State, and he was like, hey, he's awesome. He's going to be great in the clubhouse. He's going to be a great teammate. He's going to do all those things. And even really struggling on the field, he's been awesome. But I think he felt weirdly about it. And then he goes out, he hits the 2 home runs. And I kind of thought you'd see him in the lineup today to see if he could consolidate that a little bit. Instead, they put Topher Jones in. Topher's a guy that came out of Pearl River, has a lot of athletic skill set about him, is just kind of a good baseball player more than a profile that you were raving about. You just kind of like everything he does. He plays hard, takes a lot of pitches. He reached 3 times today. He hit a double. He walked twice. Hit a home run, I think, against Memphis on Tuesday, if I have that right. And they needed a place to put him to see if they could get some at-bats. So he had practiced in the outfield one day, and then he played left field today. And I asked him after the game, when was the last time he'd ever been in the outfield, and he did not know because I'm sure he was one of the better players on all of his teams dating back to T-ball, and you typically don't put those guys in left field. So it is possible that he has never played a game in left field in his life prior to today, and had practiced there one day outside of just shagging some BP fly balls from time to time.
I mean, in college baseball, you can get pretty, I don't know if liberal is the right phrase, but you can stick just about anyone out there at times and make it work if they hit enough. Dillard was kind of rough at the beginning of his career playing the outfield. He got a lot better at it. But, yeah, I mean,
athletic guy goes and catches the baseball. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the name of the game there, and so that's not totally surprising. Although them rolling him out there, him just doing it once, that actually is kind of surprising.
Well, I mean, hell, Hayden Federico had never been out there a year ago, and now he's their center fielder.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, the days of like that 2014 outfield where you had like a real like plus defensive outfield, they haven't had one of those in a while. But I mean, different rosters are constructed in different ways, but I don't know what they're going to do with it. I'm curious. I mean, at what point, and I'm open to either side of this. I don't know what's better, but they're rotating, Topher Jones, Tate Sermons, then Pasella in there as well. At what point do you kind of have to go with the guy and give him some at bats and see what they can do? Because now they've kind of the runway of non-conference play has run out. Like, it seems like if there was a time to do that, maybe it was the last week or two, and they didn't. And I'm not saying that's an incorrect thing or correct thing, but how do you think they're going to approach that? And do you make anything of just platooning guys that often is going to subtract from all of them because there's not enough consistent opportunity?
One of my goals for this week is going to be to break down the left-right situation to see if there's some very obvious ways that you can platoon based off how guys are hitting. But yeah, does Mike get any more analytical with the lineup, number one? And then two, how does he sort? What now is a group of, I'm doing it in my head. It's really 5 guys at this point, which is too many. There's just no way to get them enough bats to get any kind of rhythm, barring a couple other changes. You're talking about freshmen that you either have liked or really like between Sermons, Mosley, and Golden. You're talking about Jones, and you're talking about Pasella. And again, I think so much of Pacella's is just mental because he hit bad pitching at Illinois State. I keep saying this over and over and over again, but it's very relevant. If he's going to struggle, if he's going to struggle because of having a hard time with velocity or the level or something else, that was coming in the SEC. He hit 48 home runs against the kind of dudes he's been facing the last 4 weeks. So that's not physical. You've got to let him get to the point where he's comfortable enough to see what's physical. He was a top 4 projected round draft pick for the summer. You got him over a big-time recruiting battle. You got him to turn down the draft. You're paying him a lot of money. You've got to play Daniel Pasella until you know 100% sure that he cannot play. I don't mean the money part, even though that always plays a role in things. I mean every part of it. You've got to make sure of what you have with him above all else before you know how to move forward and then what that looks like at that point. I think that's kind of job one. And then where can you play Topher? Where can he play? Where is he comfortable to try to see what you have or you don't have? Because I don't think you know yet on him what you have. I think that could go either way right now. If you told me he ended up being an everyday player, okay, great. If you told me, just not quite there right now, okay, I'll buy that too. And then Mosley's looked good at times. I've liked it. But he's barely had any at-bats. He's hit a couple home runs, hit a grand slam. Been cool. It's been fine. I don't know. Golden was awesome in the preseason in the fall. He's really struggled. Mike likes Sermons. He hit a home run the other day. He's been okay. Your question, and I think this is maybe, I guess I'm kind of doing around the horn for Thursday through my head as we're doing this podcast because I'm having all these different questions about lineup and who to play. So I'll throw this one at you. What do you do if Austin Foley continues to struggle offensively? He's hitting below 200 right now. He has not run the ball out of the ballpark the way that he ran it out of the park last year. He hit 20-something home runs, all that stuff. I'm not surprised by some level of regression. I am a little surprised it's been this level of regression through still a small sample size. We're talking about 17 games in baseball, which is just not enough to change every dynamic. But here's what you get. Colin Reuter is arguably Ole Miss's best hitter right now statistically. I can make that argument from a statistical standpoint. He looks very comfortable, and he's been able to hit left and right-handed pitching to some degree at different points of his career. Do you think about catching him in SEC play at times if Foley is not hitting? Now, the thing that I can't pick up from where I sit, and fans are not going to be able to pick up from where they sit, but you have ways to measure this, is Foley still strikes. He's a really good receiver. He's an above average, close to elite receiver. He frames. He keeps everything in front of him. He does so many different things behind the plate that don't get noticed but contribute to winning, contribute to more strikes, contribute to handling this pitching staff. And when you have a team that is so dependent on the pitching staff being what carries you through this season outside of the home runs, I just don't know where that balance falls. I've got to have him hit, and I also need a catcher, because Reuter is good behind the plate. He's fine. He's not Foley, though. So where does that come in either way? And some of that comes into what other spots in the order are you having to make up for? Are you just not going to hit at shortstop? Are you not going to do this? I don't know where that puzzle sits as we get here into the second week of March.
That's where I was going to go too. I mean, obviously the only other option would be to catch Reuter and DH someone else. And you made a good point about the pitch framing and the stealing strikes aspect of it. I think where fans' minds most often go to first is he. It's not like you're going to have a huge drop off in cutting down traffic on the base pass and throwing guys out. They weren't particularly good at that last year.
No, it's not the throwing out. Yeah, no. That's not it.
It's everything else you just outlined. So I think it just comes down to how much they value that. And I don't know. It's an interesting team because even when talking about like the Foley piece of the equation aside, those guys you mentioned in the outfield and who they trust and don't trust. Well, if a couple of them hit pretty well, in some years you'd have like the DH slot open and you just throw one of them in DH, but that's not the case because the best hitter on the team to this point has locked up DH pretty good. So it's like, I don't know if logjam is the correct term. There's just not a lot of places to move around parts. It doesn't feel like there's as much fluidity with this team than there has been in years past heading into SEC play. I think that can be a good and a bad thing. But to your point about like not hitting at the shortstop position, I don't actually, if I told you they had to play someone else other than Braden Randall at shortstop, I don't actually know what that would look like or who that would be. And there's been plenty of years, majority of years, where I could at least make a case for somebody or someone else. With this team, I don't actually know what that looks like. Do you have any idea?
I mean, your other options are, and again, I don't know what it looks like, but Topher, Utermark, Pano. By the way,
I forgot about Pano.
Real quick, we have not said enough because it has been boring and good. Decker has played really well at second base defensively because I have not even thought about him over there, which means he's done his job. They've gotten a lot of steadiness that they hope for out of him. Look, Pano's hitting. I actually kind of like some of Pano's at bats. I mean, you just don't know mentally where you're going to get defensively to try to play him somewhere because I thought, and I think I said this yesterday, maybe I didn't. I don't know. It's all running together. Friday in the second game, I thought was a tell from Mike because he wanted to play Pano. He wanted to get him some at-bats. He DH'd him. And that's not because Randall has to play every single game. It's my opinion. It's my guess. If I'm wrong, okay, I'll admit it. I think it's because he was worried about Pano having an early error that then messed up his offense and got in his head the rest of the game. I think they were trying to take out as many variables as possible and let him just find a way to get 4 or 5 really good at-bats. I think that's what they were doing with DH.
And they had that option, of course, because it's a doubleheader and you're catching a different guy in Reuter at the second game of the doubleheader. I didn't think about it like that. That certainly makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that's what it was last year when it was Pano versus Chang. It was the offense versus defense, but then Pano didn't really hold up his end of the bargain offensively for it to matter, and Luke Chang became the shortstop. I don't know. I guess I'd forgotten about Pano. That would be the most obvious one direction to go if they did something else at shortstop. But yeah, I mean, this lineup feels pretty set. I think it kind of is just going to be is what it is from a lot of boom or bust standpoint. There's going to be some frustrating innings, but when they're hitting the ball over the fence, they're going to be pretty damn tough to go through as well.
Yeah, Utermark now at 39, I believe. He is 9 away from the record by Kyle Gordon, who has 48. Next up is Gonzo and Brad Henderson with 40. They are tied at 40. And then Matt Smith, Matt Snyder at 41, I believe. 41 or 42. I think it's 41. And then Elko at 46, 2 behind Gordon. So that's the list between Utermark and the all-time school record for that. We'll take our final break real quick. Tell you about AnySpark, the fastest, most reliable fiber internet option available. Whether you're streaming the Rebels or connecting with family and friends, they offer both residential and business packages with speeds up to 2 gigabits. To learn more, register for service. That's AnySpark.com. AnySpark connected. Stay local. And podcast brought to you by G&M Pharmacy. 662-236-2222. They deliver locally in the Oxford area, and they offer MedSeed. Fill your prescriptions at the same time each month and take care of you. One trip to the pharmacy, one delivery. You have everything you need when you need it from G&M. Let's see. Where are we going next here? Real quick, you mentioned it. Ole Miss plays Texas in the first round of the SEC men's tournament. They're in Nashville. Your bracket, just for anyone that cares. real quick, is number 16 LSU, number 16 seed LSU. I need to be very specific there. Against number 9 seed Kentucky, 11:30. Mississippi State, the 13 seed, against 12 seed Auburn at 2. Ole Miss, the 15 seed, against 10 seed Texas at 6. And number 14 seed, as you mentioned, South Carolina, number 11 seed Oklahoma. They say 8:30, but good luck on that. It will absolutely not be 8:30 when that game tips. And then that moves up into your day 2 teams, Missouri, Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas A&M. And your top 4 seeds in the SEC tournament are Florida, Alabama, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. The winner of Ole Miss and Texas will play number 7 seed Georgia at 6 o'clock on Thursday, same time slot. The next day, they're from Nashville. So I'm looking at it here. I guess 9, 10. I mean, the SEC is for sure getting 10 teams into the field.
Probably. It's interesting if you look at Lenardi's latest bracketology, 3 of the last 4 buys are SEC teams. It's Missouri, A&M, and Texas. And then somehow Auburn is the last team in the field. I've kind of been on the stump of I don't really understand this. They don't look like an NCAA tournament team.
But I also put it on the board today that if you're the last team in going into conference week, you're well out because of bid stealers and stuff. That's an artificial last team in.
I mean, hell, if they lost to Mississippi State on Wednesday, they'd be 16-16 on the year. And I know that's not the metric people are looking at, but like, my God, in what world does that team deserve to make the NCAA tournament? So, yeah, probably 10. I don't think Auburn makes it, and I think those other 3 are safe in Texas, Texas A&M, and Missouri. So, a league that was not as deep as it was a year ago, but still gets 10 teams in. I think midway through conference play, late January, if you told me they got 10 or potentially 11 teams in, I'd have been a little bit surprised by that. But that's kind of looking like what's going to be the case. But boy, Kentucky, they paid a lot of money to be playing at like 11:30 a.m. on Wednesday in Nashville. That's a tough one.
In 2027, I'm not sure that anybody's going to go into the season with more pressure than Mark Pope. For a guy that is for a team that's made, that's not falling off the wagon. But I mean, he's got to show a different level. I think this was Kyle Tucker, who covers now basketball nationally for 24/7. He got hired back, but covered Kentucky very well for so long. I think I saw where he said that Mark Pope. What did Kentucky do in the league? Whatever they were, I think they were 10-8. Mark Pope has 3 seasons as a power conference head coach. He's gone 10-8 in all 3 seasons in the leagues he's been in.
Last year felt a hell of a lot better 10-8 than this year. Like, he did a pretty good job.
Well, and then he went 10-8 at BYU in the Big 12 before he got the Kentucky job.
Okay, 10-8. I mean, he's nothing if not consistent. It's just one of the, particularly in his 2 years at Kentucky, one of those things is not like the others. They dealt with injuries last year, a much tougher league, and he's in year 1. This year was not that. I mean, they were non-competitive in a lot of games, getting run out of the gym early on, and so not the most popular guy. They're not totally falling off though. I will always remember the bloody hand deal from the Ole Miss game last year. Ole Miss puts it on him pretty good, and he comes to the press conference with the bloody hand because he's hit something in the locker room after the game. But yeah, I think he'll have an immense amount of pressure on him next year. But I don't know. This sport's so funky. I don't think Kentucky will win more than potentially a game in the NCAA tournament. But if he makes the second weekend again, I think that'll take some heat off of him. It's just kind of a weird sport in that way.
So let's see real quick. Last thing we'll do today, and we got all week to talk about this. You and Colin will talk about it, and then I will talk about it in some podcast form as the week moves on. SEC play for baseball starting Friday. The key one, Ole Miss and Texas. They get going at 6:30 Central Time. They're on Friday. 2:30 is the time on Saturday, and then I think 1:30 on Sunday, but I don't have that in front of me. But your rest of your weekend, Auburn is at Missouri. Missouri, by the way, I mean, I don't think they're any good, but they're 14-2. So I'll give them credit for winning some non-conference games there with the Tigers. Auburn 13-2, ranked 7th in the country by D1 right now. You got a top 20 matchup in Athens between number 19 Tennessee and number 11 Georgia this weekend. South Carolina, I think, sucks. They might be worse than Missouri, actually. They're at Florida at open league play. LSU is at a really scuffling Vanderbilt team. Vanderbilt is now 10-7 overall after 17 games. They lost today to North Dakota State, is what happened to them today.
I saw that they were down.
Yeah. Here's a big one in Fayetteville. The Mississippi State Bulldogs are at Baum this weekend for Arkansas and Mississippi State. Alabama at Kentucky, Ole Miss, Texas, and Texas A&M at Oklahoma to kick off league play. So several really quality big series there going on. So anyway,
it's a deep league, as it is every year. I mean, these last few years, particular SEC baseball, you can flip around to 5-6 games on a given day and be pretty entertained. I mean, 3 or 4 of those matchups in particular are interesting to me. I mean, Ole Miss is the obvious one, but State, Arkansas, and Fayetteville will be fascinating.
Tennessee, Georgia.
Vanderbilt and LSU. Yeah. I mean, Vanderbilt and LSU's not really playing great baseball either. I think they'll get it right, where I think Vanderbilt could absolutely be bad, but curious to see how that turns out. I do think South Carolina sucks too. I don't know about worse than Mizzou bad. I will need to see a little bit more of SEC play from both, I guess. I say that. I'll probably watch very few of either one of their games just because they're not very good. Maneri, I guess just a game has passed him by.
Dude,
they're very unhappy with him.
It's bad.
Yeah,
bad,
not great sound bites either. He's always been kind of an odd, quirky guy too. And when I think it's going that poorly, I don't think it curries any additional favor. I think he's maybe a guy that this whole sport has passed him by a little bit.
Today, just kind of wrapping up again, North Dakota State beats Vanderbilt 5-2. LSU down 2-0 to Sac State in the 4th inning of their rubber game right now. We won't be on for that as it finishes. And then Florida, they lose to High Point on Friday. They lose to High Point on Saturday, and they have a 12-11 win today to avoid the sweep in Gainesville against High Point. Wright State goes into Knoxville and wins 6-0 today. Tennessee 12-4 on the season. Bama wins. Kentucky wins. Stetson beat Arkansas 4-1 today. And then Princeton and South Carolina tied 1-1 in the 2nd inning currently of that game. Is that really right? They still in the 2nd inning at 8 o'clock? It's 3-1 Carolina now, top of the 3rd.
I was going to ask the same thing as relates to LSU. That seems fairly late for them to be in the 4th or whatever you said. That seems
I guess they had some
odd.
rain or something.
They also played a midweek game on a Monday this week. What's that about?
I've never heard of that. I can't figure out what their schedule is doing or not doing. And then on Tuesday, that's when the Rebels return to action. They face the number 10 Southern Miss Golden Eagles at Pete Taylor in Hattiesburg. As we mentioned, they lost the first game of the season to UC Santa Barbara. Came back, took 2 out of 3 from the Gauchos, and then their only other loss is a Wednesday 3-2 loss to Nichols State. That is, or sorry, just Nichols now. Nichols?
I caught a lot of the last 5 innings of the State Southern Miss game on Tuesday. It was actually a lot of fun. Back and forth game, electric atmosphere down there. Southern Miss is really good.
They are. They're the same scrappy team they always are, and I think they have a little more talent in a couple spots. They're good. They're a legitimate top 16 team for sure, something like that. So Rebels, they got their week cut out for them. I think if you offered Mike 2-2 right now, he probably would be very very tickled with 2-2 to then come back at the house and see what they can do against Kentucky. They've got back-to-back home series after this. They get Kentucky. And then for the first time since that 2009 Super Regional, Brian O'Connor is in the house, this time with his Mississippi State Bulldogs from Virginia. So that's the deal there. You and Colin, you're recording tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, Colin I did basketball today, Sunday, with Addison Herbert, and then Colin had had practice. He's got a coaching conflict, so I'll talk to him tomorrow and get that up for as soon as we get done.
So a little more baseball coming to you, some basketball coming to you, and then, again, a full slate of podcasts, or at least close to it this week, but just probably not in the normal time slots that you are expecting. So appreciate this crowd. Actually, the stream was not overly busy, but we had some big crowds just from an overall stream number standpoint here this evening. So appreciate all of you guys. Again, this will be Monday morning in audio form for Blue Sky Live. So for Brian, I'm Chase. We'll talk to you again very soon.